As you can see, there's no telling when this water on Interstate 10 will recede or when the highway will reopen. But one thing that Jefferson County Sheriff Zena Stevens knew was that people that were stranded on the highway could not wait for that to happen. Yes, Dan. In fact, I'm back here with Port Neches Officer Ashworth, and he is going to update us a little bit. But first, I just wanted to show you, as you can see, it has gone down quite a bit, but there's still plenty of fire there. Police officers saying that their concern is that there is going to be a third explosion, and a very volatile situation. So obviously that's why they have ordered this mandatory evacuation.
Happening now, many Port Arthur families are still struggling to recover from Harvey. Some say a nonprofit called Help I'm Hurting is causing them added pain.
Yeah, the group received monetary donations and supplies to help Harvey victims rebuild. But tonight, many of those who registered for aid tell us they're still waiting. KFDM's Angel San Juan is investigating and joins us in the studio. And Angel, how did this come to your attention?
Well, guys, it was the summer of last year when the group Help I'm Hurting tried to become the official long-term recovery group for Jefferson County. But two commissioners, Michael Senegal and Bo Alfred, raised objections. They said they'd heard some of the group's board members were resigning, upset that Help I'm Hurting was paying a salary to its executive director while many Harvey victims were waiting for help.
Nobody has ponies at parties these days.
The Hernandezes give new meaning to the term close-knit family. Esmeralda says she, her husband, and 3 children, 10 to 17-year-olds, have lived in the small Nederland trailer since Harvey destroyed their Port Arthur home. This is what's left of their house on Highland. The trailer they now call home has a bed in the living room because all of their possessions are crammed everywhere else.
We're not invited. Sob, sob.
Still, Esmeralda is doing the best she can to provide a normal life for her children. Her oldest daughter, Leslie, says it's not easy.
Sometimes we have to sleep all together, so it's just kind of hard to just get used to it.
Esmeralda reached out to the recovery nonprofit group Help I'm Hurting, based at the time at Mount Sinai Missionary Baptist Church in Port Arthur.
Ellos me dijeron que me iban a construir una casa.
They told me they were going to construct a house with 4 bedrooms because we are a family of 5. But nothing happened.
Nunca más me
They never called me back. Help I'm Hurting did not help. Case in point, the American Red Cross set up something called the Coordinated Assistance Network, or CAN. The goal to avoid duplication of services among nonprofits. Turns out a check of CAN records shows Help I'm Hurting closed the case as if the work on the Hernandez home were complete. But check it out, still just a crumbling shell.
Nothing's done under her name in CAN except enough to get her a CAN ID, and her case would be closed. That's not Red Cross's problem. That's not the people that set up. That's the case managers that are doing that. And so that's a problem.
Autumn Brown is the founder and executive director of the Southeast Texas Civilian Task Force, another recovery group that has rebuilt 3 homes in Jefferson County and has another 30 on the nonprofit's to-do list.
Thousands of people, and just Port Arthur alone, thousands of people. It's people that haven't even had the means to even begin gutting out their homes.
That's why Brown was so disappointed that Help I'm Hurting had a warehouse full of construction materials like roofing shingles, sheetrock, and appliances inside this building in downtown Port Arthur.
That's a long time for stuff to sit, especially when you have so many people in need. And so then I was made aware that stuff had been sitting there actually since last March.
More than a year.
More than a year.
And according to World Vision, the organization that donated the items, representatives say they have no idea how Help I'm Hurting acquired the relief supplies.
You know, the understanding was that this was not supplies that was just supposed to sit in a warehouse somewhere. These supplies were meant to get to people, to get them immediate aid and help and rebuild.
At that point, Brown reached out to Help I'm Hurting, signing a contract with the group to get building materials for her agency. But check out the invoice. It's been altered, reducing the quantity that Brown was supposed to get.
When we got back to pick those things up a couple of days later, then those numbers had changed, and so it started to lead me to question a few things.
Those questions led us to John McZeal, a 61-year-old father of a 21-year-old daughter who requires around-the-clock care.
We were homeless. Me and my baby was homeless.
Homeless because of Harvey. The storm flooded his home in the Montrose edition of Port Arthur. A helicopter had to rescue him and his daughter. These are pictures of that rescue. But more than a year and a half later, they have not been able to move back into their house.
I'm sleeping in a recliner. I don't know what it is, but I would be so elated to come into my home, and sleep in a bed again, to have my daughter in her home, where she was raised at.
And just like the Hernandez family, McZeal received a promise from Help I'm Hurting to rebuild his house. The group gutted the home, making it worse, and never returned.
In fact, the people that was employed there is no longer there. And you call a number and you don't get a response.
Help I'm Hurting's executive director is Cheryl Brewer. We first interviewed her in June of last year. She was touting the group's work.
We're busy bees. We have a lot of cases that we are working. We have probably about 7,000 cases that we're working.
But when the complaints started surfacing,
I was raised that your word is your bond.
Finding Brewer became a challenge. We called her cell phone.
User busy again.
A worker told us she's no longer in town, so we went to the church, Mount Sinai, where Help I'm Hurting was based. No luck. But we did find coolers, ladders, wheelbarrows, and other materials exposed outside.
Music, but no one's answering the Help I'm Hurting line. This phone number that we just saw here on the truck, that's the number to call. We're trying to call it, just music's playing.
Since we first started our investigation into Help I'm Hurting, the nonprofit has shut down operations, leaving families in limbo.
Not a great feeling because we were depending on them to help us rebuild the house, but then it did not end up happening, so now we're here, crowded.
Late this evening, we heard from Mount Sinai Pastor Randy Vaughn, who started Help I'm Hurting. He told us he has not done anybody an injustice. He says the group has helped 700 to 1,000 homeowners. Pastor Vaughn says Help I'm Hurting has taken a hit because it follows the rules and laws, but he claims the group has been victimized by jealousy and envy in the community. And Vaughn says the program had to shut down because the Texas Workforce Commission was ending a program that provided caseworkers for Help I'm Hurting, and without that program, there would be no staff. Now, we do have good news to pass along. The Southeast Texas Civilian Task Force is looking at rebuilding the houses of both the Hernandez and McZeal families. Guys.
Dania Amoso, her dad, mom, and sister on the road moving from Houston to Pennsylvania, but their journey hit a wall Thursday morning. A wall of water.
We tried to track the weather, and it didn't seem like it was going to be that big, but it ended up being a big storm.
Tropical Depression Imelda dumped a massive amount of rain. No longer could you drive down Interstate 10. It suddenly became a parking lot, and those in these cars and trucks, castaways on a highway turned island. Amari Soto is a truck driver from Miami. He tells us there's been nothing to eat. You can imagine we're desperate. Local first responders have been busy rescuing Southeast Texans from their flooded homes, but all of a sudden, another crisis developing. Accidental storm victims stranded on I-10.
People have been frozen on highways for 3 days. Who'd ever thought about that? And so what do you do with this new population of people who are not familiar, most of them not familiar with our area?
As you can see, there's no telling when this water on Interstate 10 will recede or when the highway will reopen. But one thing that Jefferson County Sheriff Zena Stevens knew was that people that were stranded on the highway could not wait for that to happen. So she launched this massive operation combining boats and wreckers. At the same time, volunteers from the Cajun Navy shuttled water and food to the drivers and passengers while they waited to get rescued. This FedEx driver, one of those pulled to safety. How do you feel to be, rescued?
Fantastic, emotional.
But the rescuers also feel gratitude. Sam Barrick is here from Oklahoma. He brought his airboat to save lives.
It feels great. It feels really good. We're glad to be here.
Dania says for her, the ordeal was not a bad one. She and her family made a friend. A truck driver let them sleep in his rig. Southeast Texans have learned that disasters cause pain, but also bring us together.
I feel like there's two ways to looking at things, that you can see it as we got stuck here, or you can see we got new friends together, helping us to each other.
Amber Feener has been waiting for this moment all day long, the arrival of her children from school. The first one, her youngest, 6-year-old Jacoby. Feener is right there as the bus drops him off to greet him with a big hug.
I have been worried about him all day.
Her oldest, daughter Cindy, and son Kelson are the next ones to come home.
How was your day back at school?
This was the first day back to class after last week's explosions and fires at TPC.
It was probably the scariest thing in my life that I've ever had to experience. I know my kids are definitely petrified. You know, they should never have to go through anything like this.
Feener and her children had a front row seat to what unfolded last Wednesday. They live on Merriman, right across the street from the plant.
A refinery just blew up.
This is video Feener's daughter captured on her cell phone minutes after the blast.
And it just blew the whole frame off.
The explosion blew out the family's front and back doors.
I went outside to notice the embers and everything in the air, and then the fire just erupted, and I ran out on the road. I flagged down an officer and was like, do we need to evacuate? I've got 3 kids here. And he said, as of right now, you know, there's no evacuation.
A mandatory evacuation would not come until hours later, but Feener did not wait.
I looked across the street, saw the fire getting bigger, loaded my kids up, and boogied to Orange.
It was an emotional decision.
I didn't even pack. I told them to grab your most important thing, put them in the car, and left.
Not knowing if they'd have anything to come back to.
Scary because, you know, you don't know where you're going to go. You don't know what to do. You're thankful to be alive, you know. I don't ever want to go through that again. That was scary.
1 week later, Feener looks across the street. The fires are out, but the memory remains vivid, not just in her mind.
A lot of fire and the police.
Little Jacoby remembers as well.
We saw some black smoke.
Feener says her priority is restoring their sense of security.
You spend a little bit more quality time with your kids now. You know, it's not, okay, let's eat dinner, let's take baths, let's go to bed. It's let's watch a movie, let's enjoy some quality time because we could not be here right now.
Not just a family growing closer, but an entire community.
We come together, we're going to stay together, we're going to help each other rebuild. You know, we're going to be Port Neches strong now.
Not dwelling on the recent dark days, but focused on a bright future.
Explain to people how this first came to your attention and where you went from there.
Hey, Dan. Well, first of all, I live in Port Neches. I work night side, so I had pretty much just gotten home, settled in, was about to take a bite of a hamburger, and I felt an explosion. I've lived here for more than 20 years. I grew up in Houston. I've never experienced the explosion that I felt. In fact, I live on the second floor of an apartment complex on Naw Street, and I was scared to even walk out because it felt like the explosion had happened there in the apartment, and I was worried that it was going to collapse. Well, I walked out, and sure enough, my neighbor, I had no damage to my apartment, but my neighbor's apartment, his window had shattered. Started speaking to other neighbors, they had damage as well. Then when I turned a corner, I just looked in the distance, and this big orange ball of fire. And I'm just going to move out of the way because we're back. Earlier we were at Central Park near the ball fields, and we've returned here, so it's a closer look at the fire. And as you can see, Dana was so right about those winds. It has really picked up. They're very breezy, cool, obviously from the north. And what we've noticed is that while the fire, when it first happened, was almost 3 times the height of where it is now, still it has continued to spread, and now this black smoke is just billowing out, and it apparently has gotten worse with the wind. And so obviously still a challenge to fight. A lot fewer people here when it first happened, and then when I first came out, I heard almost like a lot of car alarms, and then it took a while, then it was silent, and we were all wondering what was going on. And that's when we started hearing the first responders from not just Port Neches, which the fire department is really close to here, but also firefighters from Jefferson County and Orange County. As you mentioned, this was heard in not only surrounding cities, but as far away as Louisiana and Bridge City. And it's still going strong right now. It was just a few minutes before 1. And then when we got here and we were doing that, we started hearing from folks of not just we had, my neighbor had a shattered window. Well, a lot of people had damage to their roofs, to their doors. The high school is not far from here at all. And the high school was the big door to the gym was basically pulled out. And the Natchez Federal Credit Union by Market Basket, that was shattered. A door of a convenience store. There is damage throughout Port Natchez. And the problem is you might see some of the damage, but really until daylight, we won't know the full extent of the damage. We talked to Dr. Mike Gonzalez, the superintendent. He was trying to make sure that it's just assessing the campuses. And one thing he did tell me, Dan, that's important, that's really something to be thankful about, is the fact that school is out for the week and students don't have to return till Monday. So that gives the school district enough time to basically assess damages at the different schools. The main concerns, of course, the high school and the middle school, which are very close off of Merriman. There is a command center set up and not far from here down 366, and that's still blocked out even for media outlets. We were going to go, but instead of giving information right now, they're basically just trying to control this behind me and making sure that the personnel and everything is, we know they're accounted for, but that everything's okay. And at the height of this, I think Jillian and you mentioned it, when this first happened, I mean, it looked like more traffic than you would see in the daytime here in Port Natchez. Everyone went out to their cars to see the damage, see what was happening, making sense of this, and it was a traffic jam. And I think, folks, that's when the first responders really, they don't know exactly not only the chemical, but they just did not want accidents or anything to basically hinder what they were trying to do. And the main thing is shelter in place, but the First Baptist Church in Nederland did set up shelter for anyone who can't stay. And there are folks that can't stay in their houses, as Jillian mentioned. In fact, the superintendent's in-laws, they're in their 80s, and the blast shattered windows and landed on his father-in-law, a lot of this glass. So they're staying with them tonight. So a lot of folks, when they wake up, are going to see damage. A lot of folks are having to deal with damage right now and trying to find shelter. And of course, in the midst of all this, we had a rainstorm, and I don't know if that was good or bad as far as the fire, but right now, what I could guess, the wind is definitely not good. And I'll get out of the way, Dan, real quick, so you can just see another, this is it. We're pretty close. Do you see the fire still going? The fire has spread, to other buildings. I don't know if it knocked down a tower, but it was close to burning up a tower. And now what you can see is the smoke, but you can also see some light. There are people close by, obviously, whether it's firefighters or other personnel assessing the situation. But right now we are really seeing this thick, dark smoke. And like Dana said, the wind has been pretty brisk in the last 30 minutes.